Miles versus cashback. Which credit card should you choose? This has been one of the most popular questions asked on my channel. And today, let's make a very clear distinction between the two. Now, assuming a $100 spend, if you spend it on a 5% cashback card, you get $5 cashback. That is very simple, right? It's very easy to quantify $5 because you can use your $5 to go and buy bubble tea. But let's say you spend $100 on a 4 mile per dollar cards like the City Rewards Plus Amaze, where you get 400 miles, right? Because 100 times 4 equals 400 miles. Can you use 400 miles to go and buy something? Can you use 400 miles to buy bubble tea? In fact, actually you can, because if you download Kris Plus using my referral code down below, you get $5 sign up bonus in KrisPay miles, and then you can use this KrisPay miles to go and buy Gong Cha. Okay, not only is giving you 10% off, but you can pay with KrisPay miles. Anyway, all this kind of good deals is shared on my Telegram group. So if you haven't joined that Telegram group yet, come and join us for free, right? We have over 5,000 members teaching you how to use your credit card and app rewards effectively at Honey Money SG. But that's not the point of today's video. The point of today's video is whether miles or cashback is more valuable towards your personal lifestyle. And I will actually discuss this topic into two parts, right? The first part is to really find out what is the value of the mile, and I'll share an example of it by redeeming an economy class ticket. Now, part 2 of the video will be optimizing the best miles redemption by redeeming it for business class. So that will be a follow-up video after this. So if you're a total newbie in air miles, okay, and you're not sure what are air miles for, I could give you a few following examples of what you can do your air miles with. Now, this is in particular for Singapore Airlines KrisFlyer miles because that's our home carrier, right? Singapore Airlines, one of the best airlines in the world, and they are using the KrisFlyer miles as their loyalty program. So other than transferring your KrisFlyer miles to the Kris Plus app that I mentioned in my intro, which you can use it to pay for lifestyle goods and services, but that's not the best use case, right? So one of the ways is to partially or fully pay for your flight tickets with Singapore Airlines, and the other way is to redeem all these credit card points to your own personal KrisFlyer account such that you can use this KrisFlyer miles to redeem for Singapore Airlines flights. So let's give a very specific example. Assuming in the coming June school holidays from 10 to 17, you are planning a trip from Singapore to Tokyo. That's a 1-week trip, by the way, Saturday to Saturday, and it's considered a peak period, right? Because during June, all you parents are traveling with your kids, and maybe those teachers, MOE teachers, you can only travel and take leave during this period. So if we look at the economy class tickets, that will cost from $1,208 for a 2-way flight ticket from Sing to Tokyo. Do note that there will be cancellation and fee changes even for the lowest class ticket. So if you proceed to payment, you realize that if you have sufficient miles, you can actually offset some of these cash payments by partially paying with your KrisFlyer miles. And in this case, I could actually offset part of the air flight ticket with 50,000 miles, and in the end, I only need to pay $732 cash. So how much is the savings though? It's $1,208 minus $732, which gives you $476 of cash savings. Now, to convert this to a value of a mile, we will just take the cash savings, which is $476, divided by the 50,000 miles that you used to redeem, and that will come up to a cents per mile of 0.95 CPM. CPM stands for cents per mile. So let's be very clear here, 0.95 CPM is the lowest cents per mile value because this is where even the airlines is willing to let go of this mile value to you, and 0.95 is not a fantastic rate, but let's give it the lowest rate to be 0.95 CPM. So like I mentioned, the second way is to redeem your flight ticket with air miles, specifically KrisFlyer miles. And in this way, we need to book a flight by redeeming with miles. So please select the option when you book your flights, and then you can start to see what are the points required for your specific flight. So you can see on your next page that your required air miles is at 45,000 air miles per way from Sing to Tokyo. Do note that this is the advantage fares, which means it has immediate availability. So 2 ways will be 90,000 air miles at the airport taxes at $102. By the way, advantage means normal price, which means that you can redeem it anytime, most of the time. And then saver is like a promo price, right? Discounted rate. So sometimes you may get the saver rate available, sometimes you're not available, and you may have to wait list. But to make it simple, I will just use the advantage rates because June is really a super peak season. I think it's very difficult to get a saver rate. So using just advantage rates, your 1,208 cash value ticket is now offsetted with 90,000 advantage KrisFlyer miles at 102 in taxes. So you see your value of amount, we need to take 1,208 minus the $102 in taxes first, then divide it by 90,000 and you will come up with a cents per mile value of 1.22 CPM. That's much higher than the 0.95 cents per mile, right? So you see, offsetting your cash payment with miles is most probably not the best idea. And to go even deeper, let's say if you manage to secure a saver rate, but to secure a saver rate, you need to choose another date, okay? Maybe a more off-peak date. Example, let's select an off-peak date from maybe 12th July to 20th July. That's after the June holidays. And you can now see that your savers rate tickets can be booked without any waitlist, which means it's immediate confirmation. So your savers rate is only 27,000 per way. So 2 ways will be 54,000 miles. Remember to add that $102 in taxes. So I'll check the cash rate as well. That is Sing to Haneda, 12th to 20th July, which comes up to $877 cash. Therefore, if you want to find the value per mile, you just have to take $877 minus the airport taxes of $102, divide by the miles required, which is 54,000, and you will come up to a cents per mile of 1.43 CPM. That is even higher than the advantage rate because saver is much more affordable. Now do note that I'm excluding any miles conversion costs from your credit cards as well as any potential rewards that you could get from paying cash rate because those are quite negligible in the grand scheme of things. So let's just focus on the oversimplified calculation. All these miles redemption, even for economy class, is still netting you a higher value than 0.95 CPM. If you did offset your flight ticket with your miles, so it's never worth it to do that, okay? At least you do economy class redemption, it's worth much higher. So now we will find out what is the max value of the mile because this is what the banks are willing to sell to you at. And you know, banks are not charities, they want to make the maximized profit. But you see, even for credit cards like DBS Altitude and City Premium Miles, they are offering you a 10,000 miles rewards when you pay the annual fee of $194.40. So how to get $194.40 is sweat. It's a $180 base annual fee plus the GST. So next year with 9% GST, it will get more expensive. But the truth is, if 10,000 miles is equivalent to $194.40, then 1 mile is equals to 1.94 cents because this is the lowest value that the bank is willing to sell you, which means if you redeem your air miles for more than 1.94 CPM value, you are actually ahead of the bank. So to recap, lowest value CPM 0.95 when you offset your cash payment, okay, and the highest value will be 1.94 CPM when the banks are willing to sell it to you. Now anything in between is a real arbitrary value, which means it's just imaginary. Because like I mentioned, even for economy class ticket redemptions, it can range from 1.11 cents to 1.4 something cents. Now my personal value of a mile is 1.25 CPM. But I'll share the detailed calculation more in my part 2 of the video because I really want to show you the business class ticket calculations and redemptions, which is much more exciting than the economy class ticket. Last episode, we talked about the valuation of mile and I showed you my exact calculations of how you can derive your personal value of a mile. So in today's episode, I will share my own personal calculation of a mile and how did I derive it and maybe help you optimize for the best use for your air miles so that it can help you maximize your redemption and award flights. Now in my previous episode, I talked about economy flights award tickets netting you around 1.1 to 1.7 cents per mile depending on which destination you redeem your awards flight for. So to cut the long story short, business class award flights redemption will net you at least 2 cents per mile. So that's a dramatic increase from that 1.1 to 1.7 cents from that economy class, right? So in today's episode, I'm going to explore a few examples of how you can redeem business class award flights for at least 2 cents per mile. The first thing about using your miles for awards flight is that you really need to plan ahead for your travel because it's not like cash ticket, right? When you want to buy, you just have to pay cash and you can get the ticket. For miles award ticket redemptions, you need to have a more strategic planning and more flexible dates in order for you to get that seat availability, as well as you can make any changes if you need to change your plans. So for my first example, I'm going to use the date from 2nd to 11th February in 2024, which is next year, for the business class flight from Sing to Munich return. Now why 1 year ahead is to really make sure that you can redeem at the savers rate. I talked about it last episode, right? Savers rate is the discounted rate and then advantage is the normal rate. So if you want to make sure that you have the best availability, that you can do an instant confirmation of your flights, then make sure you book as far ahead as possible. But of course, I understand that you may not be able to plan your flights so far ahead. That's why for award flight tickets, especially for saver awards, you can actually pay a 25 US dollars to change your date for your award ticket flights. That's for the business saver. And if you redeem an award ticket for an advantage flight, you can change it for free, $0. So we take a look at this flight, 2024, 2nd to 11th February, Sing to Munich. We are looking at a miles redemption rate of 207,000 KrisFlyer miles plus $195 in taxes. And then if we go back and look at the cash redemption rate, we will be getting $4,435 for the cash rate. Now you ask yourself, are you willing to part with 4,400 Singapore dollars just to take a return flight from Singapore to Munich? Now I could honestly say that I wouldn't, because 4,400 is a lot of money, right? It's somebody's 1 month's paycheck. But if you manage to earn that on your air miles for credit cards, then it does not seem that bad, right? So now let's calculate the value of the mile. How much are you redeeming it at? So we take 4,435 minus 195 divide by 207,000, and we will get the value of mile to be 2.05 CPM, which stands for cents per mile. So you see, that's at least 2 cents per mile of value, which is much better than your economy award ticket. Now, one more thing to note about award tickets is that they has much lesser fees if you want to change your dates because of your flexibility to travel. Maybe your company wants you to host an event, or you have an important project coming up and you're unable to travel on that intended date. You see, award tickets, even business saver, allows you to change at a small fee of 25 US dollars. But if you look at the cash rate for business flight, okay, which is the lowest cash rate, you need to pay at least $340. That's on top of your $4,400 of ticket fee, you know. So you see, sometimes award ticket, even if you have to book like 1 year ahead or like a few months ahead, but you are able to change the date at a very small fee if you really need to do so. So this is why most of the non-company sponsored business class passengers, they are able to travel that because of their air miles, okay? And you definitely could too if you apply the same mile strategy using the air miles credit cards or rewards credit cards. Okay, so let's take this award ticket one level higher. What if you want to fly in the best class available for Singapore Airlines? And that will be the KrisFlyer Suites class, which is available on their A380 airplane. Now, there are not a lot of flights which is using the Airbus A380, which is one of the largest passenger airplanes. So you need to be very strategic about that route. So I have chosen Sing to Sydney for 10 to 17 February 2024. And that will be on the A380 first class suites. But it's very difficult to find the saver rate. So the best I could find is only the advantage rate, which is not at waitlist. Now, if you were to do a miles redemption, how much would that cost you? So we use this search booking and we can come up to this miles redemption rate of 310,000 miles at $173 of taxes. And the cash rate for the same flight will be $9,224. That's a lot of money, but you really need to make sure that when you're booking it, it's the correct class and the correct flight route, okay? Make sure it's the A380 that is serving this flight route. Otherwise, you're just getting normal first class. You're not getting the suites class. So your value per mile calculation will be $9,224 minus $173 divide by 310,000 miles, which comes up to a cents per mile value of 2.92 CPM. Now you see, that's almost a 50% improvement from that business class redemption that we talked about earlier. But you ask yourself, are you willing to pay $9,000 over dollars just for a two-way flight from Singapore to Sydney? I can answer for myself, it's a definite no lah, because you don't save on the time. You just travel in better comfort, better luxury, better space, better privacy and all that, but you don't arrive faster, you know. So this kind of luxury travel thing is very subjective one. Some people do it for the experience, some people do it for the convenience, some people just prefer to have a more private space, some people just prefer not to be squeezed with the economy class passengers. So one final scenario that I want to talk about is that, is there really no use case to chase miles if you are not interested in business class or first class travel? I would say no, because it actually depends on how far is your destination, and sometimes economy award flights may really make sense. And let's take a look at this route from Singapore to SFO, San Francisco. I'll put it at the date from 6 to 14 January 2024. And let's take a look at the cash rate first. You see, the cash rate will be $1,931 all in. And then the advantage miles rate will be 140,000 in air miles plus $93 in taxes. But if you look at the savers redemption rate, which is available for this date, it will be 84,000 air miles at $93 in taxes. So if you calculate the value of miles using the advantage rate, you are taking $1,931 minus 93 divided by 140,000, which will give you 1.31 cents per mile. But if you calculate for the value of miles saver rate, then you will just take 1,931 minus $93 divided by 84,000, and that will give you a cents per mile value of 2.19 CPM. And you see 2.19 CPM is better than the business class redemption ticket already. So the short conclusion I could make here is that miles redemption are definitely worth it for further destinations, even if you're not traveling on luxury cabins like business class or first class, because like even economy class ticket to SFO is worth it at more than 2 cents per mile. So the further the destination is, or the higher level of award seat that you redeem for, the more worth it is the miles. So that is a general rule that you can follow if you're playing the air miles game. So in short, I have 4 tips for you if you want to play the air miles game and redeem award flights. Number 1, understand the value of the miles. Make sure you know how to calculate the cents per mile value and make sure that you are not losing out in any way. Number 2, use your miles wisely for high value redemptions and not for short flights. Number 3, plan ahead so that you can have the best availability to actually secure the saver rate instead of the advantage rate. And finally, be flexible with your travel dates, because since you need to book really far ahead, there may be instances where you really need to change the date, but you just have to pay a very small fee for that. So personally, I do have 2 ways of valuing air miles. The first value is based on my effort to earn the air miles and to track them. So if I were to compare a 4 mile per dollar card, I'll compare it to a 5% cashback card. So some of the examples of 4 mile per dollar cards includes like your HSBC Revolution, your Citi Rewards Mastercard, your DBS Women's World Mastercard, as well as UOB Preferred Platinum Visa or Visa Signature. And then your minimum 5% cashback cards are like your DBS Live Fresh, your Citi SMRT, your UOB Evo, and OCBC Frank. So you see 4 mile per dollar equivalent to 5% cashback, because the same amount of work is needed to track it, and hence 1 mile will be equals to 1.25 cents per mile. So that is the earned value, which is 1.25. But how about the redemption value? I will only redeem miles if they are at least 1.5 CPM, because there needs to be a profit margin between how much it costs to incur versus how much you use it to redeem, right? If not, what's the point of the effort? And in case you are unaware of the effort, you do need manual effort to accumulate all these air miles over the years to make it worthwhile for you to redeem. You also need manual tracking to make sure that these air miles do not expire, whether in your bank account or in your KrisFlyer account. Also, the fact that you need to plan routes ahead, so you need a lot of detailed and strategic planning to plan your travel. And lastly, the opportunity cost of not earning any air miles because it's an award flight and not a cash flight, right? So cash flight, you can earn some little miles for your flight tickets, but for award flights, you don't get that. So I would say between 1.25 and 1.5 cents per mile, that 0.25 will be my profit margin. And that is largely my personal value of a mile, which may not apply to you. But what is your value of a mile then? If you do your own calculations, I would like to know about it as well.